Put up the two black spheres forward.
Oh no, that's terrifying. Yeah, that's happening. So I'm gonna close out of
Booyah.
that and hope it's still going. And if it is, great. And if it's not, I'll cry about it some other time. And now I'm gonna breathe for a second because I'm testing out some new stuff. This is not in my captain repertoire. And now, friends, welcome aboard the Funny Boat Podcast. Ahoy, hoy! I am Captain Boomies, your host, and with me, as always, is the broker with the beard, Mr. Ed Pickering. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic, Captain Boomies. How about yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty good, but I heard you made another giant boat sale. You jerk. I hate you.
It's been a good month. It has been a good
It's so funny because people keep telling me the boats are slowing down, the industry's slowing down, but like everything I see coming from you is like, no, it's not slowing down.
Hey, I'm gonna ride this wave till the shore. I can tell you that.
I was always really bad at like boogie boarding and body surfing. I don't know if I'd be any...
I love boogie boarding. That was my thing. Good grief. Good grief.
Well, so I just want to give some updates real quick. Our last episode, oh man, first of all, I loved the episode with
Jeremy and Missy. Fantastic.
Oh my God, they were so funny. They were so adorable. I'm so excited about that. And then our next episode was you and me in Posters in Annapolis, and that was a great and ambitious thought that we had to go do some guerrilla podcasting. And let me not recommend it ever again because the audio is so hard. I may never actually publish that episode. Well, or I might put it behind, some kind of deep, dark wall that you have to email me directly to ask me about it. And if you want to do that, go ahead. I'm at Captain Boomies on everything, or you can bother the broker with the beard. He's also out there on the internet doing all kinds of crazy things. But speaking of guerrilla podcasting,
yes, tell us.
Speaking of guerrilla podcasting, I am so excited because we do actually have. I'm going to get in trouble by saying this, but one of my favorite podcasters.
Indeed, absolutely.
Joining us today, and that is Mr. Jeffrey Wettig. His podcast is the Shooting the Breeze podcast. I've been on it. A bunch of folks that I'm obsessed with have been on it. He's been doing it so much longer and harder than we have. So you better respect the heck out of him.
Absolutely.
Have you met Jeff before? I have no idea.
Not in person. I haven't met him in person. One of the first sailing podcasts I listened to was Captain Jeffrey Wettig. And we actually, where I live is actually not too far as Eastern Shore standards go.
Well, fantastic. Well, without further ado or whatever, and let's toss some lines and let's get Captain Jeffrey Wettig. Welcome aboard the Funny Boat Podcast. We are so freaking excited to have you here.
Ahoy, ahoy, ahoy.
It's contagious.
Oh my God. Thank you for letting me torture you with this.
Yeah. Oh. Yes, I am Captain Jeffrey Wettig. You can see on my shirt, it makes me a captain. Instead of, actually going to school and like taking classes and having on the water experience, all you have to do is say, I'm the captain now, and you're captain.
Oh no, you actually did the hardest part, which is buying a boat.
I've bought 4 boats in my career. And some people say you can only ever have one boat. Well, you get 3-foot-itis, then you end up with another boat, and then you got to sell one, and I've actually almost broken even.
Almost.
Or made money potentially on my boat sales.
Are you sure you're not a customer of mine?
Well, I was going to say, maybe I need to be a broker, right? Yeah.
Oh my God, I love it so much.
Well, thank you for having me. This sounds like a very cool concept. And, you have to be a trained professional to gorilla podcast.
Oh,
I'm working on it. Good lord, oh, I had all the microphones and I still couldn't get clean audio out of that.
Right?
It was
Right?
pretty wild. I don't know. You must have spent forever cleaning up some of the audio at the boat show, but
I tweaked it a little bit. Yeah,
your boat show podcasts are my absolute favorite though, because you hit everybody I'm excited to see and everybody I'm excited to hear from. You just nail them
Right?
all in your podcast, and I get so pumped every time it's I'm
Well,
like, oh
it's
my
cool.
god,
Like,
you
that
got to
was,
meet that guy.
yeah. And that was kind of the original concept was, originally I started out telling stories from my boat club there, Hans's Point Yacht Club, because I sat on the porch enough times and sat around the fire enough times hearing people, the guys that were, older than me, had a lot more experience talking about their sailing trips. And you can't imagine, it's just a little yacht club on the Northeast River. It's no consequence to anybody except the people that are there. But people that are from our yacht club have sailed around Cape Horn, gone out and done the ocean kind of cruising that everybody else talks about. But they also did the master of your own domain race, which would
ooh.
leave out of Hans's Point Yacht Club and sail around the Susquehanna Flats. And anybody who knows the
Ooh.
Susquehanna Flats knows the north part of that channel is not marked at all.
Uh-uh.
I hate it.
And
I
they would,
absolutely hate it.
right.
Sketchy.
They used to do a bridge and back race, which would leave out of Hans's Point, go down to the Bay Bridge, turn around, and come back, all in one shot. We've done the Sippy Cup race now out of there. They stopped doing that, but Dobbs Suzanne from Walden Rigging set that race up because they were out there one day and said, "There's somebody else in a small 22-foot boat. Let's race to the bridge." Okay, when you get two boats out there, what is it? It's a race. So they started Sippy Cup.
Well,
They're
let's
pointed in the same direction, right?
Right.
let's back up for
So,
a second though, because
yeah.
I think Mr. Wettig here is a sailor. Let's be 100% clear. He goes out
Oh,
with
yes.
canvas and a keel, and he makes
Yeah.
things happen with wind. And
Ooh.
not
Wind,
all
yes.
of our listeners do that.
That's true. That's true.
So
I come at it from a sailing perspective.
yeah,
For sure.
so like a race, if for those that are uninitiated in sailing, is just a tiny bit different. It requires you to know what the heck you're doing, which is why I'm impressed that you do as much racing as you do.
Right.
And then you do some podcasting on the side, which is super weird of you. And I'm,
Right.
yeah, no.
Well, I always wanted to feel like I was part of the community, and then that just goes way back, to being like I managed bands for a while. I had friends that were in bands, and I used to take pictures like before podcasting and all that stuff when it was still kind of novel that you could take a digital camera to a show, take pictures of the show, and then actually upload those to the interwebs. Before it was all in your hand, in your pocket. I used to do that stuff, and it was mostly just because I wanted to be able to, like, hey, I like your band. I think your songs are really cool. I think you're a cool guitar player or whatever. I'm going to take pictures of your band and kind of just so I could feel included. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how the podcast started. Actually, the podcast started in 2013 is when I actually started recording, and I had wanted to do it in 2010. I was doing some writing for there was this website out there called examiner.com, and their big theory was they're going to have local kind of newspaper experts write articles about whatever their subject matter was, and then they were going to put it up to the regional edition. So I was working out of Harrisburg, and I got paid like $2 for an article or whatever. And I'm like, I'm just writing about things that are happening at the yacht club, kind of races that I find out about, or whatever sailing related stuff I could come up with. And at the time, I was like, I would really like to do a podcast because I'd gotten into podcasting like in 2005 with Kevin Smith and Film Spotting and some NPR shows that were being released as podcasts. And unfortunately, I lost my job. Therefore, buying the $200 recorder was not going to be in the cards in 2010. So it took me until 2013 to kind of get my stuff together. And then I had to learn about WordPress, putting together websites. How do you get this thing on the internet? Like YouTube was just starting out. There wasn't like this quick and easy fix on how to get a podcast out there. So you kind of had to learn all about it. And so I got that rolling in 2014 is when I first started the podcast. And like I said, it was all trying to be stories that I had heard at the yacht club. But then the spring boat show was coming around. I'm like, well, I can go to the boat show and maybe I can interview people. And I didn't know Andy Schell, but I had read an article he did in Spin Sheet. And, I'm sitting around the clubhouse like in December or January in the middle of winter, reading a Spin Sheet article. And he talked about having a small house and a small boat as opposed to like having a big boat or a big house. They were living in Lancaster. I'm like, wait a minute. Living in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is where I'm from, where I just moved away from. And then I kind of dug a little deeper and I friended him on Facebook and found out that he was from Reading, but he was in Annapolis all the time because his dad had a boat there and he worked on the woodwinds and he was doing this sailing podcast. And I had just started my podcast. I'm like, dude, we should meet up. So we met up with him at the spring sailboat show that year in 2014. And he had his dad's boat, Sojourner, there. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of like the start of the whole kind of getting into the community as opposed to me just sitting around my yacht club with a recorder. Now I was kind of interviewing him. I was interviewing other vendors at the boat show. And then just through that kind of association, because his podcast really took off.
Oh, yeah.
And he's in the business, you know what I mean? So he's got access to like big names and really important people. But just because I had him on my podcast and I could say, hey, I know Andy Schell, we both do podcasts. So I was able to interview like Paul and Cheryl Shard from Distant Shores and kind of really get into that kind of groove with people. And once I started interviewing people, I got up into like episode maybe 15 or 20. Like I kind of had imposter syndrome for a while. And I still do at times, you know what I mean? Where it's like, what am I doing? Why am I the one talking to these people or whatever? But after I'd done it a handful of times, I just got more comfortable doing it and reaching out, and it just kind of went from there, And then the big October sailboat show, like the really big sailboat show happened, And I had already done some recording at the previous one the year before. And it was kind of weird how the podcast rolled out because the first couple episodes were from my yacht club, but I had already done these interviews from the boat show the previous fall and didn't put them out until like episode 5 or 6, But like you were saying with the recording, like I didn't have my windscreen on, and
terrible.
They're looking at me like I'm crazy because I got this microphone sticking in their face. They didn't really know what a podcast was, so it didn't really gel until like the second year. When I kind of got into a groove and was able to do it every other week. I did almost 2 a month for probably 5 or 6 years. So now I'm down to about 1 a month just because my work schedule's changed and things are different. But yeah, I appreciate the guerrilla podcasting, and I could do better at it. I actually every now and then somebody will write back, I didn't really like that episode because you couldn't hear so and so, and it's like, you're sitting in the cabin of a boat, and like I have a bunch of external microphones that I don't really carry around with me, so if I don't have them with me, I got to just rely on my one handheld recorder, and it does pick up the room, but then if somebody's sitting over here or somebody's sitting over there, it doesn't quite come over the best, you know what I mean?
Right.
This is all very helpful, by the way. I'm learning
taking
a lot
notes
right now.
Right. And you have to hit record, and then you also can't delete the files off the thing before you transfer them.
Oh God, I'm so
We did hit
screwed.
record, right? We did do that?
Exactly.
Yes, no, I'm good. Wait, you know what? I should have done that.
Jeff, it's funny because I have that same connection with Andy. He grew up sailing out of my parents' marina.
Oh, okay.
In Rock Hall, and it's like full circle. Our booth for my brokerage that I work for, and his booth were right next to each other this fall.
Oh, wow.
I can't believe I didn't bump into you. I did bump into somebody else, Captain Boonies, at the show. Well, when
very
we're at the
popular.
Lats and Ats party, we gotta say
Yeah.
hi.
I'm very popular.
The sequins
Yes.
pulled me in.
Yes. Yes. I'm
But
sure she was
this is
handing out free
fantastic.
koozies as
You've
well.
had everybody on your podcast.
He's had everybody on his podcast, but he's had everybody that uses Canvas to get around. And this is where I feel like you and I are gonna, differentiate ourselves, because I don't what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not prejudiced against motorboaters. I should stop drinking.
Right.
That was a hard thing to find in my brain just then, and I'm sorry.
Right. Well, just, I have been on power boats before. One of my best friends, Jim, still has a pontoon boat, but he spent, 15 years running jet boats around the Susquehanna River. And then, I finally got him to come down to the bay on his pontoon boat, which he spent the first 5 years just going to canal days, basically, over at Chesapeake City.
Sure.
Until they put the kibosh on that whole thing. But yeah, I finally got him into sailing. I sold him my old boat. Now he's sold that and bought a 38-foot boat. So, he's been converted, but he still has the pontoon boat, and they do serve their functions well during social gatherings like July 4th, when you can all get on the pontoon boat and go hang out.
There you go.
Look,
Nice.
I think the pontoon boat is the most perfect boat ever.
Oh yeah.
Do you have any idea how little
weather,
maintenance they have to do?
Yeah, exactly.
So little maintenance.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
I mean, so the thing that fascinates me though is sailors love your podcast. They are obsessed with it because you have gotten to talk to some hardcore sailors. But the boaters, like the motorboat people, unless you're doing the weird formula cigarette boats or some of these very high-tech monsters, nobody really knows anybody who's doing any boating unless they're doing fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm 100% honest, I don't fish.
Just for compliments.
I don't fish. I don't really I like eating fish. That's a thing. I'm gonna
What's
get
that sign up for?
Yeah.
Well, and that's why there's 3 magazines out of Annapolis. One's called Spin Sheet for sailors, then there's Prop Talk for power boaters, and then there's Fish Talk.
Fish Talk, yeah.
For fishermen, because not all fishermen boat, you know what I mean? Just to be honest with you. And, not all motorboaters fish or sailors fish. But it's all based on the important part here, I think, is the water.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Water is what really brings everybody together. Sunsets, just connecting with nature. And, I understand people want to go fast on their sailboats and their motorboats for the exhilaration, I guess. But at the end of the day, you're at an anchorage, or you're on a mooring, or you're at the marina and you're sipping a cocktail, or you're having some coffee, or you're chilling out. You're just relaxing in nature on the water and having a good time. And that's kind of the most important part.
I love it. You're so much better at this than I am. Why is that? Well, okay. So one of the things that I've been trying to create a video about recently is the fact that powerboaters hate sailboaters and sailboaters hate powerboaters. But you're making it sound like there's less animosity than I imagine there to be.
The only time I hate motorboaters is when they wake the hell out of you for no reason. You know what I mean? Like, especially at a quiet anchorage. And people ask me all the time, what's your favorite episode that I've ever done? And one of them is episode 11, and it's more for the storytelling. But as I recall, I was sitting down interviewing Matt and Carrie, who are from our boat club, because Matt and Carrie went through the derecho in 2011 on their boat in the Sassafras River. And almost died because of it, basically, but as we're sitting there trying to tell this story, we're sitting outside of Lloyd's Creek, and you can hear it in the episode. Oh, here come the jet boaters. Here come the whatever. How they're waiting. Right, personal watercraft, beware. Here they come. And there's 10 sailboats anchored together, and they're weaving in and out between them, and that's the kind of stuff that really gets me annoyed after a while. Or you're going up the channel, and here comes a boat, and it's fine to be 25 feet from me. You know what I mean?
I've got two words for you:
You know,
potato gun.
yeah,
You're gonna get in
yeah,
so much
exactly.
trouble, Pickering. My God.
Well, but in all honesty, it's like it's the disrespect, not necessarily to sailors, but just other boaters. The one of the worst offenses I can think of, because it almost really affected me and my buddy. We're in our mooring field at Hans's Point Yacht Club, right? We have buoys on either end of the mooring field that say no wake zone, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm moored up here. My buddy's boat is whatever, 50 feet this way. And we're getting in my dinghy to go to his boat. And I turn my engine on and I come around the backside of my boat. And shit you not, a cigarette boat doing about 50 miles an hour cut between his boat and my boat. And almost hit us. And we're in the middle. It's not like we're on the edge of the mooring field. We're in the mooring field. You know what I mean? And this guy thinks it's cool to go on plane, however fast he was going through this mooring field. And that's a quick way to kill people. You know what I mean? We were literally 12 feet from getting run over by this guy. And he didn't blink an eye. He was gone, didn't see it, didn't know, had no idea. You know what I mean? And that's at the root of that, I think, it's like, you're a credit card captain. There's just as many credit card captains in sailing as there is on power boats. But, a credit card captain bouncing through the mooring field at a half a knot. Whole different thing.
That's as fast as I can go.
Captain doing 50 miles an hour through the mooring field. You know what I mean? And I think that and, like people, there's a shipping channel, right? There's a channel that all the boats have to go on that are deep boats, right? Going up and down the Northeast River. And, here's a guy who probably just bought his boat last summer. He's got his 3 kids, and they're, pulling the tube behind them. They're tubing in the channel. So the kids fall off the tube, and he's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna gun it this way." And it's like, here they're literally like 20 feet in front of us. These kids are flopping around in the water, and now I'm sailing. I gotta like try and avoid these 10-year-old kids or whatever in the channel, and it's like, there's the entire Susquehanna Flats is over there. It's 4 feet deep from here as far as the eye can see. Just go over there, get out of the shipping channel. But they're just, I don't know if there's not, I know like the Power Squadron has classes and everybody's supposed to have a boater's card or whatever, that they've done the safe boating thing, but I don't know that that's the kind of stuff that they're actually teaching people. You know what I mean? And to me, it's just common sense, but it's like, come on, please, figure it out. So anyway, I think that's where some of the annoyance really comes in, is just not respecting other people's like area, you know what I mean, of operation, and just kind of who cares? I'm just going to go over here, So I think that's part of it. For me anyway, that's like the big thing.
I feel like you nailed it. You totally hit all of the things that people tell me all the time. But you're also a sailor, and as a sailor, I gotta tell you, powerboaters hate you right back.
That's because we don't get out of the way fast.
No, you don't. No, you know what it is?
And we have the right of way half the time anyway. You know what I mean?
It's actually that it's this concept of right of way that's the problem. Mm-hmm. So the right of way is the problem, where sailboaters are like, well, I have the right of way, and the reality is they're actually what's sometimes referred to as the burdened vessel, meaning they are required to maintain their course and speed to the best of their ability. But here you are, this sailboat tacking back and forth in the channel, and that is not maintaining your course and speed. And that's confusing for a powerboater that doesn't understand
it requires
when and why you're doing what you're doing.
I mean, it requires cooperation and common sense, and you got to realize if there is a boat under sail, they can only go certain ways. They don't go the right way.
There's a limit.
They're either going to be laid over to their side, or they're going to be sitting there stationary, not going anywhere.
No.
So I mean, it's definitely just a give and take between everybody. But I think education is key. Not that I knew everything. I had a powerboat squadron class in 2005 when I first bought my first boat, it was a night class, 3 hours a week for like 5 weeks or something like that. And they teach you how to tie a bowline, and this is the freeboard, and that's the transom, and this is aft, and some of the rules of the road. But again, I don't know that they're teaching common sense necessarily.
Wait, they actually taught you how to tie knots? That's really cool. I didn't know that.
We had a guy, and it was annoying to me because I am, let's say, I am not challenged.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Very challenged. The knots, yes. It takes me a little while to figure out how to tie a bowline to this day. I've been doing this for 17
The
years.
rabbit.
He was up there with a bite line, and he was making knots so quick that we're all sitting there like, what's going on? What was that? What did you do? And it was ridiculous because I think some people knew how to do a bowline at the end of the class. But, it's those things where it's just, I got to stop and think about it. Be like, oh, the rabbit goes around here, and then it goes through there.
So, when I was taught, I had a bosun, old Navy bosun, and he would always say, "There are no rabbits at sea."
There are no rabbits at sea. Listen, I don't know if there are 100% some really fluffy, weird white things. So, he's wrong. He's just wrong.
Depends how many mushrooms you eat. You know
what I mean? Whether it's your guests and their weird white powder, or.
That was more in the 70s.
Oh my God. So that's actually one of my favorite things is boat decor based on era. Like it's all white in the 80s. It's amazing.
I heard, I just saw a thing on Facebook where Seafood, the boat from Caddyshack, is somewhere in Maryland.
Well, Wharton Creek Creek Marina.
Of course the broker knows where it is.
You scratched my anchor.
It's my backyard. I'm going to go put a sign on it tomorrow.
No.
No, I'm not.
I love that. That's too fun.
Well, I think, we speak of days of yore. I think, it's the 70s because I grew up in the 70s and I kind of remember a little bit of it. But it's just amazing that a lot of the boats, and we're talking Hanson's Point Yacht Club, kind of a do-it-yourself yacht club. I would say the majority of the boats are from the 70s and 80s, and then it kind of progresses from there. We do have a handful of newer boats, but plaid.
Well, can we talk about yacht clubs for a second though? Because
sure.
I feel like even yacht clubs are sort of a sailor-specific thing, and powerboaters are less likely to be members of yacht clubs than sailors
I think that is true. We call ourselves a yacht club, although there's not too many yachts around.
Are they going to be upset that you're talking about them? Like,
well, let's say there's yacht clubs, then there's yacht
pinkies
clubs.
Up.
Yes, we are at the bottom league of that whole thing. Then you go up from there. You go up to like the Northeast River Yacht Club, which is more of a yacht club than we are. But let's not even talk about the one you're very familiar with.
Don't say it. Don't mention the beast. No.
As kind of a
What's
joke.
funny is they are one of the most laid back yacht clubs that I've been involved with in my professional career. They're very into their sailing. They're very into their sailing community. I love that they support the Women's Chesapeake Bay Yacht Racing Association team racing. I need all of those words. Sorry.
Yeah.
I love that they support that, which is super cool because I get to hang out with very exciting women sailors when I go there. But the surprise factor is, while it's the most fabulous facilities, the most beautiful yacht club, the most beautiful venue you could imagine, and fantastic vessels, they still are sort of low-key sailor types. As opposed to some other yacht clubs that I've had to that I've had to participate in,
I'm sure.
which are a little more
Well,
intense.
I've always said that, and this would apply, I think, to boaters across the
Okay.
board, but definitely sailors. My first trip on a sailboat was my friend Tom on his 26-foot McGregor from like 1982. That
Nice.
was,
A McGregor.
all cracked up. Had like nine, yeah,
Sorry,
a
no, I need to
9.9
stop you for just a second. Let me explain what a
Okay.
McGregor is for a second. A
Yes.
McGregor is the most trailerable sailboat, and I hate to call it a sailboat because
Yeah.
it is
Pocket
hardly that.
Yes, yes,
I know it
yes.
technically is, but it doesn't quite look like one. There's no like sexy sweeping lines. There's no,
Right.
but and yet she'll chooch, she'll go, like
Oh,
she'll
yeah.
make it happen. So I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
really
What-
fault the McGregor,
Right.
but I
It
know
is
them when
the
I see
most-
them.
Yeah, it is the most basic sailboat that you can get in a lot of regards. They were from the West Coast, and they came up with some crazy ideas over the years. But yeah, the McGregor 26. I mean, literally, he had like one little small car battery looking thing with a bunch of like 3 wires. That's about it. This light over there and that light over there, and then maybe one up on the mast. And it wasn't even a mirror. It was like this polished plastic thing that looked like kind of reflected light back at you in the galley, which was like literally a sink, and that was it. No icebox, no electronics, no nothing, no canvas. Basicest boat ever. But it was great because we went out on our first trip. My friend Tom, I worked with him, and I knew he boated and sailed, but I didn't really know anything about it. And I think I was complaining at work over the summer back in 2002. I'm like, I got a week off, but I can't really afford to go anywhere. I was going to go camping down at Elk Neck, but even they want like $35 a night. If I go down there for a week, it's still going to cost me $300 or whatever. And he's like, well, I have a boat down there. He's like, we can go boating, go sailing. I'm like, all right, that sounds good. So the first trip I ever took on a sailboat was with him and my friend Chris. And we got on Tom's 26-foot boat there, and we sailed down to Annapolis via Fairleigh Creek. And the cool part was we got into Fairleigh Creek, and we pull in, and there's like a beach bar on a spit, and then there's a marina.
Yeah.
We pulled in between the marina and the beach bar, threw our anchor out the back, and threw a line up on shore onto a tree in like a foot and a half of water. So we were literally walking off the back of the boat, getting into a foot of water, going up on the beach, and then going to hanging out at the beach bar, But we roll into dinner up at the marina at the restaurant,
Mhm.
and we're sitting at the bar, and I'm just talking to this guy, and he's like, "Oh, where'd you guys come from?" We were telling him the whole story. We're sailing. He's like, "Oh yeah, I have this, whatever, 36-foot boat. We went to the Bahamas last year." Like all this like crazy stuff to me. I'm like, wow, this is like the upper echelon of sailing. You know what I mean?
Upper echelon.
Yet we're just talking about boating. You know what I mean? This guy's probably got $150,000 yacht. We're in a $3,000 McGregor or whatever. But it was all the same thing. You know what I mean? Like
You're still floating.
Well,
You're still at the
playing-
club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The playing field is level. So in that regard, I think sailors and boaters, kind of get along because again, it comes down to that kind of factor of familiarity with just being on the water and enjoying yourself, all that kind of stuff. You get into the yacht club thing, and yes, there's echelon.
I mean, the whole yacht club thing is interesting. I'll say that. And while I am not a member of any yacht clubs, I completely get it. You want a nice place where the people taking care of your boat, and because you got the money for
And I
that.
think and that's where we come at it. Hanson's Point, I always called it the cheapest place in the bay, which maybe it isn't anymore because
No
we've
way.
been making improvements.
No way.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But anyway, the difference I think between a yacht club and just a marina, and you can find great social activities and things at marinas, but there's definitely a community of like-minded people, let's say, you know what I mean, for the most part. But I've learned a lot just from the people at my yacht club or boat club or whatever you want to call it, because we're kind of all in it together. And if you show up there and you don't have crew, you ask around, somebody will come out sailing with you.
Oh.
Hey, I'm working on this project. What do you think? I mean, you'll get 10 different answers, but somebody's going to help you.
Well, so am I being a jerk then by poo-pooing yacht clubs, or I don't know?
Well, no, I think they deserve their own level of poo-pooing. But I think it's, I think you'll see this the world over. I mean, nobody on the Eastern Shore is going to get into like the New York Yacht Club, you know what I mean, or the Bermuda, whatever. Somebody might on a race, on a race crew, but
how dare you, Wettig?
Yeah,
I'm very fancy.
Yeah.
I'm very fancy, right? God damn it.
Damn it.
Don't you know how dainty and wonderful I am? For Christ's sake.
You have a captain's hat.
Look, I'm tired of taking this abuse.
Right.
Clearly, they didn't hear the pre-show.
Yeah, exactly. But, almost anybody can walk up to any other yacht club, like on the Chesapeake Bay for sure, you know what I mean? Yeah. And whether they're having social functions, or your friend is a sailor and they have somebody with a boat there or whatever, you know what I mean? People are always going to be interested in, a community of sailors like that. So I think they're great in that regard. Whereas if you're just at a marina, you may not know the people on either, maybe you know the people next to you, but you don't know like the people 10 down, whatever. It's just a different thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I totally love and respect that. And I get really excited when people talk about their yacht clubs because honestly, yacht clubs are my favorite way to organize big boating trips. Some of the best times I've ever had in my life are when a club decided they were going to go and do a big charter trip with all their members. Like, that is some of the most fun times I've ever had in my entire life because you get to take over marinas and islands and and all kinds of cool stuff because you're organized enough to have a club. So I respect it.
Well, and a lot of the reading that I've done, especially like you follow Lynn Pardee on their travels around the world. Like, where do they end up most of the time? They end up at the yacht club.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whether they're at the dock or they just say, oh, go ahead and grab that mooring or whatever. And within half an hour of being there, they're having cheeseburgers and beers at the bar and having a good time. And they fit right in, you know what I mean? So the first thing isn't, oh, where's your credit card? Can you pay for the slip? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, we're going to make Ed pay for everything because he's been selling boats like crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thank you so much for coming. I'm going to let Ed maybe say something at some point, but not really.
Yeah, I'm just soaking it all in, really.
Well, then in that case.
Well, Ed might have questions.
Is he allowed to do that? I'm not sure.
No, I'm not. I'm really not, gang. Sorry.
You're really not?
We got a stern talking to before we hit record.
Jeff, I've already... sorry, Jeff. I've plugged you a little bit. I told folks where to find you because I'm really bad at giving your bumper for some reason, but I'm going to try one more time. If you are totally obsessed with Mr. Jeff Wettig the way I am, you can find him at theescapepods.com and his podcast, Shooting the Breeze Podcast. You can find me on it. Have you ever talked to Ed on that podcast?
I've never met Ed, but we will probably have to do an episode at some point.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
There we go. I might need to buy a boat from him someday. You never know.
Ooh.
Tell all your friends.
This has been the Funny Boat Podcast. I'm your host, Captain Boom Meets. I've got the Brooker with the beard with me. Bon voyage. You absolute nutballs.
Sail on, everybody. Especially you powerboaters. Sail on.